Hello, and welcome to Behind the Veil, Hidden Talents of the Medieval Women's Choir. I'm Eric Mentzel, Artistic Director of the choir. Like many musical organizations, our members have numerous talents and accomplishments that remain unseen by our audience at large. They are writers, visual artists, instrumentalists, singers, and scholars, and they enrich our community in any number of ways beyond their appearances with the choir. Since the pandemic keeps us from meeting in person with you, and with each other, we thought this would be a good time to step out from behind the veil and display some of the hidden talents of our members. We hope you enjoy it. Lynn Evans grew up listening to her Welsh immigrant grandfather sing and play the fiddle. Though he came to the U.S. at age 15 and lived to the age of 93, he never forgot the folk tales from the old country. He liked especially the Tylwyth Teg, the fairy people of Wales. They could cause trouble on the farm, he said, but my family treated them well, gave them a slice of fresh bread, a small cup of milk every night, and sometimes a square of silk cloth. And in turn, they left us alone. Here is a folktale about the singing Welsh and the Tylwyth Teg, accompanied by harpist Bill McJohn, playing a series of traditional Welsh tunes.
David was a strapping lad, tall and strong. He was hired by the farmer as an extra hand. He also accompanied the women when they traveled, so they had safe journey. On this particular day, David and his mistress had gone on a 2-hour walk to visit her sister. When they got there, David stayed outside while the women were visiting and daydreamed, as he was wont to do. When she came out, the two of them started back for the 2-hour walk to the farm. David daydreamed a little as they walked along, and then he noticed that his mistress was not to be seen. She must have gone up and over the hill already. Oh, he said, I'll catch up with her quickly. My stride is much longer than hers. But I would like to sit down here on this rock and just rest for a minute. And when he did, it only took a few seconds when he saw a fiery hoop come rolling down the hill and stop right in front of him. And out of it came two of the most beautiful people that he'd ever seen, in silks and satins, a prince and princess of the Tylwyth Teg. And they were dancing and laughing and singing and bubbling over with joy. And then he realized on both sides, Tylwyth Teg and the hundreds were coming in. They were dancing in circles, swinging each other around, singing together. The male voices were resonant. The sopranos soared. The tenors and the altos had rich harmonies in the middle. Oh, he said, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. But I mustn't move because I know the Tylwyth Teg can capture me and I'll never get back to my real life. But then he realized the music was being accompanied by a harpist. When did that guy come? So he sat very quietly and he listened. And he could feel the music wash over him and seep into his ears, his eyes, his skin, his very heart. And he thought, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. And he was quiet and he listened. And then he realized the music was getting a little fainter and a little bit slower. And the hoop came back and rolled to right in front of him. And the prince and princess got on, and it rolled on down the hill, leaving a patch of charred grass. The Tylwyth Teg vaporized into thin air. But the harpist was still there. Oh, David said, I need to get back to the farm. And he began walking quickly When he got back to the farmhouse, all the folk were out in front, and they said, "David, where have you been? We were so worried about you, and a little angry." Oh, he said, "I'm sorry." And they said, "It's been 3 hours." And he said, "No, not possible. I only stopped in the meadow to watch the Tylwyth Teg for just a little bit." "Tylwyth Teg," they said, and they cast glances to each other. "They're dangerous." "What were they doing, David? And did they leave anything behind?" David was so honest. He said, "Yes," he said, "they were singing and they were dancing, and it was beautiful, and I could not tear myself away from it. I watched them and I listened, and they left behind this music." And then he began to sing it. They could feel it wash over them, seeped into their skin, their eyes, their ears, and their hearts. After a while, they went back into the farmhouse and came back with the fiddle from under the bed, with the tin whistle from up on the shelf, and with the drum from the kitchen. And they began to play and make the music. "We have to learn how to do this," they said. You know, this is where the folktale ends. And folktales are so inconclusive sometimes, they don't come with a moral. So you have to kind of make up your own mind what they're about. But this is my take on that story. I think the Tylwyth Tegs are responsible for the Welsh love of music and their talent. I think they went throughout the land and they found honest messengers like David, and they taught them. And that's why the Welsh love music so much. Oh, and I should tell you, before I go, to watch out for the harpists. They come and go at will, like wills of the wisp. And their music is magical too.
As part of the late 18th century antiquarian effort to record the vanishing culture of Old Wales, Edward Jones set out to gather the music of the Welsh harpers. What he took for bardic remnants were in fact a cosmopolitan repertoire, old-fashioned rather than ancient, being played on the Baroque triple harp. His collections provide a snapshot in time of this rich and dynamic tradition. This is the popular Ar Hyd y Nos, better known to us as All Through the Night. This is the Sarabande by Johann Sebastian Bach from his Partita in A minor for flute. The entire Partita was transposed to E minor for the viola da gamba by Margriet Tindemans, the founder of the medieval women's choir. Choir member Marian Seibert, who plays it for us here, says, "I love to think of her when I work on the movements and see her fingerings in her handwritten pages. It seems so appropriate for our medieval women's choir show." I couldn't agree more. Choir member Candace Robb is the author of 20 published novels. 17 of them are set in 14th century England, and 12 of those feature her character Owen Archer, a spy for the Archbishop of York and sometime Chancellor of England, John Thoresby. Here's Candace with an excerpt from her most recent Owen Archer mystery, A Choir of Crows.
This is a scene toward the beginning of A Choir of Crows. As Brother Michaelo stepped out into the snowy yard, he heard shouts off to his right, toward the chapter house. Pulling up his hood, he turned away from the sound, bowing his head to the blowing snow as he hastened around the west front of the minster. The wind reached icy fingers into his hood, stinging his ears and freezing the lashes over his eyes. He tried to warm himself by imagining how he would soon sit before the fire with a cup of hot spiced wine, perhaps some fresh bread and cheese. He should fast and take communion, but as he had not slept, he would compensate with a brief prayer in the minster on his way. As he changed direction, he stumbled into a drift of snow beneath which something hard bruised his shins. Muttering a curse, he brushed the snow away from a long wooden sledge. Left by the stonemasons, he guessed, in their haste to find shelter and warmth. Who could blame them? Stepping through the flimsy door over the entrance to the unfinished lady chapel, he faltered. caught by an unexpected sound curling within the howling wind. A voice, an angelic voice, singing Missus est Angelus Gabriel, an Advent hymn, appropriate, but at such an hour, and alone? He thrust back his hood so that he might gauge whence came the sound. The transept? No, that would echo and cut the immense silence of the overarching stones. This came from behind a door. The chapter house? He was hurrying in that direction when something did cut the silence, the jangle of keys on a ring approaching from the south transept. Shining his lantern to his left, he saw Theo, the precentor's man, lit by his own lantern as he hurried across toward the chapter house. God in heaven, what madness has descended upon us this night? A man fallen, someone singing in the chapter house. What? Who dares intrude? Theo halted, peering at Michaelo. Out of my way, brother, he called, hurrying on. The keys and the rude command, sacrileges in this holy place. Michaelo followed on his heels. Reaching the door of the chapter house, Theo paused, breathing heavily while he bent his head to fumble for the keys. De domo David e nomen Virginis Maria. You said a man had fallen, said Michaelo. Who? Where? From the chapter house roof, or so it would seem. That snow did nothing to cushion his fall. Now hush. Between that bleating and your questions, I cannot think. It seemed to Michaelo that unlocking a door that Theo locked and unlocked daily should require little thought. Dead? He asked. Indeed. Ave gratia plena. Are you such a dolt you cannot appreciate such a voice? Bleating indeed, Michaelo huffed. On such a night it can only be the voice of the devil, Theo growled, as at last he managed to turn the key and push wide the door. While he crouched to retrieve his lantern, Michaelo lifted his own and stepped past him into the echoing space. Theo shouted for him to halt, but Michaelo paid no heed, continuing until his light illuminated the singer. Now he stopped, as he beheld a vision. A tall, ethereally pale youth with flaxen hair stood in the middle of the space with arms outstretched, slowly turning round and round as he sang, Benedicta tu in mulieribus. In his right hand he held a dagger, as if warding off an attacker. Only when he faced the light did he discover his audience, going silent and still and dropping his arms. Michaelo stepped closer, wrinkling his nose at the state of the youth's clothing. Stained and torn, his face smudged, his hair wild. He stank of sweat and fear. Another step, and Michaelo noticed how the hand holding the knife shook. And what might commonly repel him made him wish to protect this soiled angel. It occurred to him that if Theo believed this youth to be in Michaelo's charge, he might release him without fuss. Though what he would then do with the lad, well, no time to think of that now.
The lyrics of Paul McCartney's 1968 hit, Blackbird, allude to people of color in the U.S. as being broken and blinded and waiting for their moment to arise to take back their power. For Blackbird, McCartney drew upon the Bourrée in E minor for lute by Johann Sebastian Bach, rewriting the opening bars in G major and carrying that theme through the song. Since the original Bourrée was written for the lute, an instrument brought to Spain by the Moors in the 8th century. In a sense, even this song has medieval roots.
Blackbird singing in the dead of night. Take these broken
Nearly all of the 42 surviving pieces of medieval instrumental music are in the form of the Estampie, a type of dance consisting of pairs of musical phrases. The frequent reference to Estampies in songs and descriptions from the Middle Ages indicate that musicians would compose or improvise them using melodic material from vocal music. This Estampie was created by choir member Sally Mitchell, using material from Plange Castello Misera, a lament on the death of King Sancho of Castile. The performers are Sally Mitchell, recorder, and Bill McJohn on harp. Author and choir member Alice Boatwright is best known for her popular Ellie Kent mysteries. Today, she reaches back to her first book, Collateral Damage, 3 linked stories that trace the impact of the Vietnam War on those who fought, those who resisted, and those caught in between.
My name is Alice Boatwright. I've been a member of the Seattle Medieval Women's Choir since 2018, and I'm also a fiction writer. I'm going to read you an excerpt from a story called If I Should Stay, 1982. It's set at Thanksgiving, and Claire and Ben Percy have been joined for dinner by their two sons, Tom and Charlie, and their daughter Jane, and her husband, Raz, which is his nickname for Rascal. Once the plates were all filled and passed around, Ben asked, "Aren't we going to sing tonight?" "Of course we are," said Claire. "It's Thanksgiving." Singing grace was a custom the family had picked up during one of Ben's sabbaticals in England. Tonight, Claire suggested a medieval round that was one of Raz's favorites, but Charlie said, "Oh, let's do Dona Nobis Pacem instead." "All right, dear," said Claire. "That's a lovely idea. Peace. I think we can all agree we need more of that in this world." They settled themselves and glanced around the table expectantly. In the momentary shift of their attention to each other and the anticipation of making music, their faces changed. Raz thought they looked more open and relaxed. Even Tom's eyes lost some of their guarded look. Jane and Claire began the round, their pure, clear voices rising and falling as one. In the candlelight, Jane looked young and enchanted, the way she had when he first fell in love with her, and maybe it was worth it to be here tonight, just to see that expression on her face again. Charlie and Ben came in second. Ben sang with gusto, and Charlie softened his tenor to blend in with him. Raz was supposed to sing the third part with Tom, but he usually didn't. He thought it was so much nicer just to listen. Before he met the Percys, he never even imagined there were families that sat around the dinner table singing in Latin like monks. Dona nobis pacem, grant us peace. The layered harmonies filled the room like flickering lights cast by a twirling prism. As if by unspoken agreement, they continued to repeat the verses over and over. Dona nobis pacem, Dona nobis pacem, grant us peace. Raz felt suspended in music, cleansed, full, grateful even, and it occurred to him that this was Jane's beanbag chair, the comfortable place she couldn't find anywhere else. They dropped out in the same order as they began, Jane and Claire, Ben and Charlie, until only Tom was left singing in his rich, warm baritone, Dona nobis pacem. The silence that followed held them together like a bubble. Then, from under the table, the dog Roger groaned in his sleep, and they all laughed.
Guest artist Erica Chang is one of the musical friends who appear with the choir from time to time, inspiring us and complementing our work. Today she shares one of the most famous songs of the 12th century troubadour tradition, Convey la lausette mauvais, by Bernard de Ventadorn. In Bernard's Occitan text, a lover sees a lark flying joyfully in the sun and envies the happiness of those around him who bask in the warmth of love. He laments his unrequited love, concluding that since there is no chance his lady will return his affection, his only recourse is to leave forever.
Oh
Sophia Smith traces her love of medieval music to singing Gregorian chant as a student at St. John's Catholic School in Seattle. But always curious and musically adventurous, she has sung everything from opera to funk in concert halls, music clubs, wineries, and private parties. Today, Sophia shares a particular passion that she and her husband, pianist Dynan Cleary, have been indulging for nearly 20 years: Brazilian popular music. Here are two short love songs, the first by Caetano Veloso and César Mendes, and the second by João Donato and João Gilberto. Vying with her characters for a life of romance and adventure, Wendy Joseph divides her time between writing, music, and work as a deckhand on merchant ships. Her novel, The Witch's Hand, is set in France in the year 1206, just after the disastrous Fourth Crusade. In this scene, young Liana has just discovered her immense magical powers, which frighten her. Meloxia, a formidable older witch, chooses the reluctant girl as her successor, and takes Leanna to her lair.
Deep in the night, long after matins, Malaxia entered her sanctum with a candle and went all the way to the rear, the candle dancing splinters of light over and amidst the amethyst. Setting it down, she regarded the skull in its niche. "Are you there, you charlatan?" There was no answer. Malaxia waited briefly and was about to close the sliding door over it when a noise like sparks snapping in a fire came from the dark hollows of the eyes. Slowly the skull grew, possessed with life, though it made no discernible motion. "Charlatan, to what do I owe this unmannerly summons?" The foe-insulted voice from within held the sound of dry leaves in the wind. "It is one that you have earned. But would you keep me around if I told the truth all the time? How dull." Smugly the head continued, "Want to know about your new apprentice? I do not. I already know she has the gift. More than anyone else, she will be my masterpiece. So what I wish from you, you regrettable excuse of a miserable son of an abscessed mother, is what she may accomplish. That I cannot see." Malaxia was tight-lipped. "Cost you a lot to say that, didn't it? What would you have done without me?" "I don't want to hear. Wish you had my cognitive powers, the sight, the one indispensable tool in a witch's bag of tricks, and yours is sadly lacking. I taught you what cognition meant. I taught you how to use the sight." "Think so?" the skull cackled. "Do you know who else is on this side with me? I happen to know you have very few companions where you are, because I said so. You should know better than that. Few companions that have impressed you at all with the importance of proper communication." Malaxia snapped. "Aw, too bad," the head mocked. "I could put you back where I found you, but you won't. Draw your brains out through your ears." Malaxia's fury was unfurling like an oriflamme. "How? I haven't any ears or brains anymore." "Oh, plaster your mouth shut. But I don't need it to speak. Isn't that enervating?" The skull's death grin was positively smirking, and Malaxia whirled away. "Want to know what I see?" it asked. Malaxia turned back. "I can see further than you. In this case, think so. This time, I see further." Malaxia was now deathly calm. "But not everything. I'll boil you in hog fat and get another skull." "Enough! You are here at my discretion." The head sing-song, "I can see what you can't, I can see what you can't." Malaxia slammed the sliding door shut. From within, the skull continued, "Somebody's coming, somebody's coming. It's the notice, pulpris et octavi."
Our next selection, Imperairis de la Ciutat Gioiosa, comes from the abbey in Montserrat, Spain, an important medieval pilgrimage site and home of the Black Madonna. The 14th century book in which it appears, the Liber Vermell, or Red Book, explains the purpose of the music. Quote, "Because the pilgrims wish to sing and dance while they keep their watch at night, and in church no songs should be sung unless they are chaste and pious." This song, in honor of the Virgin Mary, is performed instrumentally by Sally Mitchell on recorder and Michael Legale on viol. Guillaume de Machaut is among the titans of 14th century music, and was also revered as one of the greatest poets of his time. His works represent a great flowering of the courtly love tradition that had begun with the troubadours some 2 centuries before. The title of our next selection, Plus dur qu'un diamant, translates as harder than a diamond, and refers to the heart of the poet's beloved, who is unmoved by his declarations of love. We hear it performed instrumentally on viola da gamba by Marian Seibert and Marianne Hagen.
Can you hear me? Am I muted?
I can hear you.
Eric?
Yes.
Oh, good. Hey.
Hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Oh, not bad. You know, just kind of keeping a low profile, waiting out the epidemic. It's weird to be so isolated from everybody, you know, just home with the family all the time.
I know, right? Family is great, and it's sort of nice to have company at home. But what about all those single people? I mean, they must be just climbing the walls, not being able to go out and
Yeah,
have
really,
relationships and date.
Well, I guess there's a lot of time now to think about what you want in a partner, right? Like what kind of relationship you want to have when all this is over, you know?
Yeah, I guess that's true. For instance, Amis qu'il me vaillance, où circuit toute la nuit, avec sa mère à grande druite, et sans faire son talent. Oh, s'il qui te vient et te prend, et quand il est fait, si sans fuite, ne je peux revenant, ans que la flot et le fruit.
Dame, ce que mes coeurs ensemble, vous direz, mène vos ennuis, tel fer vienne l'y déduite, et qui vous fait un saoulement. Partir sans point légèrement,
qu'à tous les autres fait son bruit. Son aile fait après ou devant, dont va mieux l'y faire, je cuis. Amis, me valez à colères, et les jouir, les déduire et les sentir, les prier et les garder, que les faire emprisonner, ça faire les grands loisirs, car trop doux les démorer, et trop aigrier les départir. Dame, moute boin les juiz, et les béchiers les gésir, les déduire et les sentir, les prouer et les garder. Sans nous faire, c'est les tuer, c'est la racine des hospices, et ce qu'en amour est amis, dont va mieux l'y faire et l'y foïr. Amis, ne t'aime pas amour, nous tout faire, ne tout aller, till l'amour ne fait aimer, car elle n'est point de savoir. Mais s'il n'est pas mon grand dolor, que peut un loisir accoler, et baiser et jouer grignon, un tel amour fait son entrée. D'amour ne vit guérir ni jour, pas souhaiter les amis estimes, ni lui qui fut navré d'amis, sans ne lui fit aucune bonne tort. Tel amour semble fut un fort, que ne s'en est parole à lire, mais enclose est si grand chalot, qu'on ne le peut s'allumer. Amis, oro est-ce que je dis, quand la bouche et les se paient de la chose, ça que les plaintes, donnant les feux par ici. Dame, je ne dis pas ainsi, mais quand les plus se refait, d'entrée d'amour à quer non vis, que pas loué al quer son d'être. Dame, pour Dieu, on écoutez les jeux et le guise et les ris, averont main d'homme mal mis, que les fers et repasser. D'en va mieux les fers assises, témoin de Gauthier de Pontis, qu'à l'amour s'en est accordé. Au final, la querelle est si. Ah! Oh well. I guess we'll have to leave it there.